Recording in progress.
Who You Are Enriches Us All by Monica Jacobson Tennyson. Welcome. What you bring, who you are, enriches us all. We say welcome to your joy, your hope, your pride. We say welcome to your grief, your fear, your anger, and the parts that are not yet ready to be seen and heard. Welcome to them all. For we are people of faith, faith in our expansive welcome, faith in our ability to grow, faith in our precious gift of our truths, faith in the promise of trying, learning, and changing, faith in our capacity to know ourselves and each other ever deeply. Welcome to you who are gay, straight, bi, pan, lesbian, queer, questioning, unable to be contained in any word. Welcome to you who are trans, cis, genderqueer, non-binary, intersex, agender, beyond words. Welcome to you who are human. Welcome to you who are loved and are loved. Welcome to you who are blessed, which is all of you. May this time together be a blessing. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lynchburg. We are glad that you are all here. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, or whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work together for justice, compassion, and peace, we acknowledge with humility that our buildings sit on Monacan land. My name is Brandon Nuckols. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I've been attending this congregation since I moved here in February. I'm a Lynchburg native and returned back to Lynchburg and have dived into this community right away as soon as I returned to Lynchburg. Being a Unitarian Universalist and part of this community is very important to me and a big part of my life. If you are here with us for the first time, we're glad you chose to be with us here this morning to participate in the service for this church community that we love. If you would like to receive our monthly newsletter and our Friday email updates, please fill out the virtual visitor card found on our website at uulynchburg.org under Sunday services, or you can also fill out the yellow card found in the back of the chair in front of you and place it in the offering basket during the offering. Also, please take note of the announcements in your bulletin, and if you are on Zoom, you can always find them in the Friday e-news, and that's a good reference for anybody. Now, I invite you to release our worries about the world, in our own lives as we enter into this service by taking some slow, calming breaths. Lighting the chalice. May we now kindle, inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life. And now, please join me in singing Spirit of Life. We're going to sing it 2 times through, number 123 in the gray hymnals. One of my personal favorites.
All right, now I'd like to invite all the young and young at heart to come join me up front for a time for all ages. Not this time. Both of us on the microphone. All right, have a seat where you can see the pictures. All right, our book today is called Neither by Ariely Anderson. Has anyone read Neither before? Oh, I
knew
bet.
it. She told me.
Mm-hmm. And then you and David read it together this morning, didn't you? All right. Once upon a time, there were 2 kinds. This, no, Mama's going to read. This and that. These and those. One or the other. Until, honk. What kind are you? I'm both. You can't be both. You must be neither. I'm neither. Neither tried to play a this game. You can't play with us. You're not rabbity enough. Neither tried to play a that game. You can't play with us. You're not birdie enough. Why don't you find somewhere else? You're not one of us. You're neither. Neither, neither, neither. Now he's flying away. Where did you come from? Honk. I'm from the land of this and that, but I'm neither. So I'm looking for somewhere else to fit in. Well, this isn't somewhere else, but you will fit in here. Where is here? The land of all. So many different kinds. Come play with us. But I'm different from everyone here. I'm neither red, nor orange, nor yellow, nor blue. Exactly. Oh, I think they were waiting for neither because they needed green to make what? A rainbow, yep. Now they have all the colors. Excuse us, we are from the land of this and that, but we don't fit in at home. We are looking for somewhere else. But you said I was neither. You said I should go somewhere else. Well, this isn't somewhere else. This is the land of all, and everyone fits in here. Once upon a time, there were many kinds, this and that, somewhat and whatnot, either, very, sort of, just, rather, a little, neither, and both, and all were welcome. Whoa, look. I know. There's so many different kinds, aren't there? Do you all have a place where you feel welcome?
Home.
At home? That's good.
You know, I go to Starbucks today and I left this big bucket.
The big buckets at the splash park are lots of fun. And I bet you feel like you fit in there, huh? Okay.
Mommy, you were showing me.
I know, because you were sitting back behind.
And today was an alien.
Oh, fun. So today in our class, we're going to be learning all about turtles. Yes, and we have some fun art projects to do with turtles, and we found some turtle races that we're going to participate in. So yeah, turtle races are going to be a lot of fun.
Wait, do they have like actual turtle like
No.
we vote on which turtle?
No.
Everybody gets to pick their own turtle, and then we'll see which one wins.
And you can't just copy people like that.
All right, I'm going to invite Beth to be our chalice lighter today.
Can I be the other chalice lighter?
No, because we only have one chalice because we're in one classroom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like my dragon?
And you are going to go sit back with Mommy. Okay?
I don't want to make a speech.
Okay. Then you can go upstairs with the other kids. All right, Beth, can we get the chalice?
Remember when you used to let us light our own chalice?
Beth doesn't prefer that. Okay, ready?
Love by enfleshed. Love cannot be bought or sold. It does not make a profit. Love does not hide from the truth. Love dives deep. Love takes on flesh. Love is queer. Love is platonic. Love is erotic. Love is asexual. Love confronts evil. Love delights in pleasure. Love touches and weeps and flirts and feeds and creates. Love is risky. Love challenges systemic evil in all its forms. Love is simple, but not easy. Love is collective. Love rises up. Love apologizes. Love believes. Love corrects. Love holds accountable. Love pays reparations. Love heals. Love tells its story. Love embraces everyone, every creature, every creation. It knows us intimately. It holds us collectively. Love transcends every boundary that seeks to confine it. It will not tolerate violence in its name. It does no harm. It only sets free. And now, please join us at offering our gifts. Today, we take an offering of our gifts for the work of this congregation, the monetary support of our members and friends, along with the generous gifts of time and talent make our congregation vibrant. If you're on Zoom, you may make a donation on the webpage through PayPal or send a check to our church office. And we now take an offering of gifts generously offered and gratefully received. In the tradition of our community, to share together.
Recording in progress.
And now let's take some deep breaths before we shift into our message for the day. Queer in America. So this message, like many others that I've worked on over the last number of years, the last 7 years actually, started off as one idea and perhaps a rather vague idea and of an attempt to reflect upon the past, present, and possible future of what it means to be queer or LGBTQIA+ person in America. I use queer instead of LGBTQIA+. We're the alphabet people. Or referred to that way by some. But I use queer because it's easier just to use in a sentence, right? Instead of going through all of that, right? For a number of reasons. Queer is just easier in conversation, and it's generally a very gray, inclusive term. Some folks are still settling into it. As far as LGBTQIA+, just a reminder, it's an acronym to signify gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual people collectively. From the UUA resource, I want to define queer a little bit. It's a term that I personally like, but let's talk a little bit about it. Queer is a multifaceted word that is used in different ways and means different things to different people. Here's some of the ways that queer is used today. As an adjective, attracted to people of many genders, although dominant culture tends to dictate that there are only two genders. Gender is an actually far more complex idea and concept and is culturally and socially constructed. Queer can be a label claimed by a person who is attracted to men, women, genderqueer people, or other gender nonconforming people. Also as an adjective, not fitting cultural norms around sexuality and or gender identity expression. So similar to the above, queer can be a label claimed by a person who feels that they personally don't fit into any kind of dominant norms due to their own gender identity expression, their sexual practices, their relationship style, etc. That's kind of where I fall in that one. I really like it for that reason. Or queer can just be non-heterosexual. Queer is sometimes used as an umbrella term, which is kind of how I'm using it today, to refer to all people with non-heterosexual sexual orientations, or all people who are marginalized on the basis of sexual orientation and or gender identity. Queer also can be transgressive, revolutionary, anti-assimilation, challenging the status quo. Many people claim that the label queer is a badge of honor that has a radical political edge. I'm also using it in that way. UU Seminary Elizabeth Nugent has preached queer for many folks is about resistance, resisting dominant culture's ideas of normal, whatever that is, rejoicing in transgression, celebrating the margins, reveling in difference, and blessing ourselves. Queer can also be an epitaph or slur for someone perceived to be gay or lesbian, which is sort of its original roots, and it's a reclaimed word in many ways. Queer is sometimes used as that derogatory term, and many people who have had the word queer used against them are understandably very uncomfortable with the word. So although a lot of us in the queer community, especially younger generations, are really seem to be embracing that word. Personally, I'm using queer today just because it is in many ways, because it's a reclaimed word that many in our community are embracing and using it with pride and perhaps a bit of defiance. I will own being queer, and if that makes you uncomfortable, so be it, or makes whoever uncomfortable, so be it. We're not here to live our lives in a way that makes people comfortable, per se, or fitting in. Because being queer is something most of us know from an early age, typically. But most of us also have learned to hide that as best we could at times, as needed. Looking back, I definitely realized that I had crushes on Timmy and Jimmy, those are real names, in 5th grade, and not Jennifer and Dawn, those are also real names. I knew that in 5th grade. I can reflect upon that now. But I had no adults and no exposure to any queer person in my life at that time. So, what did this service evolve into? Well, today you'll hear a few voices in our congregation of their experiences as individuals, as couples, as families, and as Americans. So thank you in advance to David, Courtney, Kim, and for sharing Nora's experience a bit as well. And I will also share a little bit more of my experience as a queer American. It's a vulnerable exercise that I've asked them to do. So I will say, given that it's a vulnerable exercise, I ask each of you to settle into compassion, empathy, set aside any assumptions that you might have about who you think these people might be or might not be, and simply listen with empathy and be an active listener. But before we bring them up, or a few of them up to speak, why this message, why today, why July 2nd, and why kind of framing it in kind of what it means to be a queer American? Shouldn't we be talking about celebrating America's independence? Well, personally, and I was talking to Terry about this the other day, I don't really feel that much like celebrating being an American, or whatever that is, or how it was originally founded sometimes. A lot of us don't really feel that way. In fact, that punk rock flea market is kind of a mourning. It's actually a goth kind of themed celebration of independence, but attend and you may find out some interesting folks and meet some interesting people. But it feels a little bit like there are certainly some individuals and communities and pressure and political agendas that feels like the goal is to take us back to a place where many of us will have fewer rights. All we need to do is look in the news. And one of the latest Supreme Court cases that essentially gives people the religious freedom to not provide services because they don't agree with our lifestyle. And being queer is more than just about sexual orientation or gender identity, or at least certainly it is to me and the folks that I end up talking to. Being queer is a part of history, culture, and a culture that has fought long and hard for basic human rights and to feel validated for who we are. The queer experience is unique in many ways, but should be relatable to any person with any real empathy and understanding of what it means to be queer. And if you don't, then today will hopefully be insightful and helpful to you. For instance, I do want to reference the Weimar Republic in Germany. Berlin, at one point, pre-World War II, was a queer bastion in many ways for individuals. And there were a lot of folks internationally that were flocking to Berlin in the Weimar Republic, Germany. There was a great deal of community, literature, arts, creativity. There was a lot of research on gender and gender identity going on at that time in the 1920s and early 30s. But of course, all of that ended and all of that research was burned and eliminated due to the rise of fascism and the Nazis. And then of course we get more to modern history, which is there was Stonewall, which most of us are familiar with, which was both a riot and a line drawn in the sand by queer people internationally, or sort of took that and drew a line in the sand internationally and saying, we're not taking the abuse anymore, we're done. We're not gonna be passively and quiet anymore. To see our humanity. And there were also there were many other protests that led up to Stonewall in the US and throughout the world, but Stonewall was really that linchpin that sort of changed things internationally for queer people. Now, let's go ahead and dive into, I'm gonna invite Kim and Courtney on up and turn things over to them as they share their experience.
All right. Hi, my name's Courtney Senna. Most of you know me as your Director of Lifespan Engagement here. My pronouns are she, her. I am a cisgender woman. And I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about my story. And then Kim will talk after I leave. I'm going to go upstairs and help with the kids. I am also raising a non-binary, genderqueer child, and that has been a big experience in our lives recently. So I realized that I was a lesbian when I was in college. I wasn't allowed to date in high school, or what would have been high school age, teen years, and so I might have figured it out sooner if I had, because once I did start dating in college, the woman who ended up being my first girlfriend is actually the one that helped me figure out that I was gay. And it made a lot of things from my childhood and early teen years make a lot more sense. It really clarified things for me. So I dated several different women when I was in college, and then when I was in my senior year, Kim and I met online, and we dated virtually for about 6 months, and then we moved in together and spent the next several years raising a teenager, and that was quite an experience. Yeah. And I was really thankful for this church during this time. We found the church very shortly after I moved in with Kim and Amanda, and you all here were a real rock for us during some really trying times. But we did successfully, more or less, raise Amanda and get her launched into adulthood. So I think that's good. And let's see, we were married in this church, and then we were married in Washington, D.C. once it became legal. Living in Lynchburg I've lived here 19 years. Living in Lynchburg over the last 2 decades has been really interesting. In the early years, it was a really dreadful place to live and be gay. And we frequently talked about getting Amanda raised and out of the house and then leaving. I could not imagine starting over raising another child here. And I couldn't imagine staying here. But over that time, Lynchburg really shifted and became more of a warm and welcoming place. It certainly still had its pockets, and we self-insulated a lot, but it became a much more open place and even a little progressive. And so we stayed and we did start raising a child here. It feels lately like the tide is turning again, and it's more of a hostile place to be. But I think having the scope of history helps you retain a little bit of hope that maybe it is an ebb and flow and it's not going to be terrible forever. My parents did not take my coming out well, and I don't really have a relationship with most of my biological family at this point, but I've learned the importance of forming your own family of choice, and that has worked out really well for me. And I think that is a good synopsis of my story. Thank you all.
Well, I'm Kim, and I won't say that I'm the better half, because it's definitely her. I grew up in the 70s with very conservative parents, so I didn't have much of a sex education, if you will, or worldly knowledge. And of course, at that time, being queer was illegal. It was criminalized. And so didn't really understand anything about that. And for me, I had a lot of confusion coming of age, and my first relationships with boys, young men, if you will, were very awkward. And I thought that was just my Christian oppression sort of keeping me from fully expressing or experiencing. Well, then one day I was with a girl. I was like, I had just graduated high school, and it was just so natural. And I thought, oh, okay, now I get it. But I was still very confused. And growing up the way I did, that was like a sin worse than murder. And so I was really upset with myself, and, never felt like I fully belonged. And so then I tried to be very conventional, married. I had my daughter, who's 30 now, and that was a good marriage. It went sour, not because of my sexual orientation, but other things. And then I met Courtney, and we started coming here. And this church immediately became a place of belonging. In 2004, the re-election of George W. Bush personally wounded me. I walked around sad because the key to winning that close election was the marriage amendments that were going on state ballots to bring out the conservative vote. And I felt like the reason for that re-election had to do with us, and just what an awful thing to make us, to be a part of a group that's made a wedge issue. You can't imagine how that feels. And I was just so sad for the longest time. But what really re-energized me is then with the constitutional amendment coming to Virginia, there were several churches, this one being one of them, that fought that amendment to make as a matter of our Constitution that marriage was only between a man and a woman. And coming from a religious foundation, that I can't tell you how important that was. And it was Christian churches too. And that really kind of restored my faith in people, and certainly kept this place of a place of real sanctuary and belonging. Then there was 2008 when there was an amendment that went on in California that failed, and Barack Obama won the presidency, but he didn't do a good job of really performing that. He was still very traditional on marriage, and that felt like a setback. So that's when we started Spectrum Cafe, which was to be an open place for anybody particularly young people who felt they didn't have a place to belong. And the church really embraced that. It was a once a month coffee house, played games, we had fun, we had themes. And we did that for every month for 3 years. And then it kind of ran its course and we don't have it anymore. Maybe it's time to bring it back with the way things are in town. But it's all been really good. And again, I'm grateful for this church. And I'm hoping that the ugliness that has taken over our city is only short-lived and represents a last gasp of oppressive, narrow-minded powers that want to be, and that love will rule the day. That's it.
Thank you both, Kim and Courtney. And on the Spectrum Cafe, and I'll talk a little more about it a little later, we're working on a community center now for the queer community here in Lynchburg. So we'll hear a little more about that after we hear from David.
Yep, yeah, I'm here.
The floor is yours.
Anyway, so I'm David, pronouns he, him. And my, can you hear me? Okay, yeah.
Speak as loudly as you can, David.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
A little better. Just go ahead.
Oh yeah. So, are we still good, or I might be able to change some things? Anyway, so I'm David. I identify as asexual and agender. And it was a different road from, well, most people, even some queer people. It started back in about 10th or 11th grade when I realized that, boys kind of look good. And I was like, I wonder what this means. And so, I didn't really think about it for a time. There was something missing. I was about, 30. And I went to a sexuality and gender identity conference. And I had a friend who was basically in charge of the programming and basically said, hey, basically stacked it with asexuality panels. And so I was like, oh, hey, this fits. That, yeah, I do like to look at guys, but I don't want to have sex with them. That's not something I want in my life. So, and I've also been welcomed by, all of the gay and queer people that I've ever met. Unfortunately, I know from people online that sometimes in queer communities that asexuals are like, hey, you're not actually part of us because, you don't look exactly like we do, or, whatever. So I'm happy that has not happened in my life. And in terms of the queer history that I know of Lynchburg, back in the 70s and 80s, if you wanted to park, if you can hear. There were groups and there were newspapers typed out on typewriters, newsletters, and we've had a number of iterations of various queer groups, including we had a branch of PFLAG here, which is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. And then everyone discovered, oh, hey, we're all queer. We're not just parents of lesbians and gays, we're lesbians and gays ourselves. And so that started another thing, which again ran its course and split off into other groups and things. I do know that the first gay marriage or same-sex marriage in Lynchburg was presided over by our own minister at the time, Paul Boothby. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Um, you're unmuted. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you. There's something with the sound.
Correct.
There we go.
All right,
We can
now
hear
we're
you now.
adjusted. Thank you. So anyway, I joke that my closet door was a little bit of a revolving door in and out of the closet for close to about 40 years. I identified as bisexual in college, or tried that on for size, where I did have a queer community there, and I was able to sort of be a bit more myself. After college, sort of went back into the closets in some ways, which I, at least for me, was a lot about not having a third space or a queer community or a queer church community or a community that was going to accept me for who I was. And I did primarily date women well into my 30s, although for about 6 years after, around 35, I just stopped dating altogether, period, and just took a break from any kind of dating of any kind. I started seeing a therapist as well around this time because I was wrestling with, why am I not connecting, or what's happening here? So the final step for me was figuring out things with my therapist and making some big decisions about kind of what direction my life was going to take. And certainly a lot of that was finally coming out to my parents and family, which happened to be on Easter, which was kind of a funny story there, that happened to be on Easter. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I still do have a relationship with my family, thankfully. Not all of us are able to do that or have families that we can be a part of, which is why we need places like this church community and queer communities, because many of us need a place where we can find family type of roles, mentors, paternal figures, maternal figures, you name it. I also after that, not long after coming out like fully, around 40-ish something, I met Nick, and that was my first real queer gay relationship in my mid 30s, late 40s, or sorry, late 30s, early 40s, where I started to have a first real queer relationship. Nick and I dated for about 7 years and recently have ended our relationship, but we are working towards being friends, which is something the queer community is a little better at kind of those more nuanced and figuring out how to be friends when a relationship ends. Though as I look back, it should not have taken me that long, okay? Had I grown up in a family, society, culture, and I grew up here in Lynchburg, that was validating in any way of my experience, I certainly would have figured out and settled into my sexuality much, much sooner. I do know that. I didn't really know a whole lot. I had no role models. And many of us growing up, certainly of my age, or a little older, we had no queer people that we knew. So this is kind of what, basically, I've become the adult that I needed as a child. That's what I've kind of concluded. And that's what many of us kind of end up growing into, is we become the grown-up that we need. We become the mentor or the adult that we needed in our life, which is kind of why I'm so out there. Partly because I want to make sure that why I'm giving away pride stickers, why I'm wearing pride swag all the time, why I'm being out in public, organizing with the queer community. Kim, you are way out there as well, and we need people that are way out there because we know that kids are looking at Kim Kids are looking at me. Kids are looking at other role models within the community and going, there's a queer adult. I can't tell you how much that does for individuals. Kim is nodding up here, yeah. So doing that matters. That's why we're so out there. Although certainly I've even been told, not in this church community, but my previous church community, why do I have to be so darn gay all the time? And I'm like, I didn't even validate that with an answer because that person really wasn't going to understand. This is also why I've spent the last couple of Saturdays. We are building and working on a lavender lounge, is what it's called currently, community center. Down on, David actually joined me, and Ash joined me on this past Saturday, and we're continuing to work on that. It's down on Main Street that we're working on. And I continue to be the dad, the uncle, the mentor that others need or try to be. I've been working with youth for a long time. I have a 19-year-old queer niece who I certainly try to be a good influence upon her life. And we are at a strange juxtaposition where we as queer individuals have so many more other people and queer communities, though at the same time right now we're feeling horribly attacked, oppressed, and some of our basic human rights are being stripped away, or it feels that. So we've got more queer people in community and church communities that are accepting of us, but we also feel out and there in public, it's kind of awful at the same time. It's strange. Especially under that banner of religious freedom, which I think is hogwash. So queer people need communities that are affirming, not just welcoming. It's beyond welcoming, and I like the word welcoming, but I like the word affirming much more. Affirming is affirming that you are who you are. In fact, let's even dive into the definition for a second. To affirm, you're going to state as a fact, assert strongly and publicly, offer someone emotional support and encouragement for who they are. And as allies, we want to do that. And I consider myself an ally to other people in the queer community. David was talking about how asexuals were certainly not necessarily accepted within the queer community for a time. That seems to be changing, at least from my perspective, to where we are all in this together and we kind of see it that way. And we need other communities like this church community to help support us and to be allies. There's a couple things you can do also from the UUA, 10 ways to be more welcoming and inclusive of queer people. Respect queer as a valid sexual orientation and identity and label. And if you have negative associations with the word queer, find ways to open up yourself to new understandings of the word, do personal, gentle, deep work in order to honor those that identify as queer. Include the word queer in the language that you use. And to talk about sexual orientation and gender identity. Avoid making assumptions based on your perception of a person's gender or the gender of the people they are partnered with. Open yourself to the possibility that any person of any age might identify as queer. And learn more about queer identity on your own, whether that be through a personal relationship or you might start doing some reading or articles, as many of you likely have done. Dominant culture also teaches us to depend on dualisms. So challenge yourself to eradicate the binary dualisms from your language, gay, straight, masculine, feminine, black, white, all those dualisms. The older I get, the more the world is gray to me. And I think honestly, we'd be better off with the world viewed as kind of a gray perspective. Use terms that encompass all genders, not just the binary, so boys and girls. We can go with siblings instead, or kindred, or brothers and sisters and siblings of all genders, for instance. Expand the way that sexual orientation is understood by us, and that it's not static. It can change, it can evolve. Let's understand the individuals. Queerness is also often located in the margins. Consider how we, as a congregation, as individuals, how we work with people that identify as queer or LGBTQIA. Come join us and volunteer in the Queer Community Center. We could use some help. But more than anything, I just wanted to kind of share this experience with you, and I appreciate Kim, Courtney, David, and Teresa even, who helped a little with this service, and certainly guidance from Terry. I hope we've kind of given you something to kind of mull over and think about. And on that note, I love to sing, and we're going to sing something a little bit familiar, and hopefully sort of make us feel a little communal here. We're going to sing Lean on Me, 1021. We're going into the teal hymnals. This one should be one everyone knows. Please rise in body or spirit. And please join me as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And finally, before you go, our common life is enriched. We are grateful for the gift of our lives and the gift of other people in our lives. Each of us is created with dignity and worth. We are called to love one another and to do nothing to others that we would find hateful to ourselves. We honor the many ways that people live and love. Our common life is enriched when queer, transgender, bisexual, lesbian, and gay people can come out sharing the gifts of their sexual orientation and gender identity. True justice flourishes when all people can live and flourish, and we suffer when LGBTQI+ people are oppressed, excluded, or shamed by religious people who overlook the fundamental call to love one another. Love does not exclude. We are all worthy. May we work to build a world where all people are celebrated and loved. We celebrate sexual and gender diversity as a blessing that enriches us all. Thank you. Please join us in the hall afterwards. Thank you. Join us for coffee and food in the social hall.